Greetings, Gussers. Oh, I need a drink. Been out there. Tight lines. Salmon fishing. And look what I caught. I mean, obviously, I've prepared them. You know, heads off, tails off, gutted them, trimmed them up, fillets for you. Didn't think you'd like to see that bit. But there they go. Fresh out of salmon run. So I thought, well, I better cook them, better I? So, I'm going to cook salmon. And actually, what we're going to do, this is another Recipe 30 dish, the YouTube channel's Recipe 30. We're going to steam them. So I've got my steamer just sort of out of shot slightly there. Okay, we're going to steam them. I'm just going to put there for a minute, because we've got a lot of prep to, well, not a lot of prep, because we're going to accompany them with what he calls Leek Confit. Now, strictly speaking, it's not confit, because confit is generally cooked in fat. And that's a whole ball game, actually. I learned a lot, actually, looking up about confit. But I'm going to tell you that another time. But I've had confit in France, but I've always imagined it to be very fatty, very unhealthy. But the way it's cooked, actually, it's not that fatty. But anyway, that's another recipe altogether. We're going to have freshly caught by moi steamed salmon with leeks. Yaki da. Right, so I'll put that salmon on one side because that ain't going to take long. First thing I want to do is prepare me leeks. Okay, leek. Now, you might think of that as a Welsh thing. Tell you about that in a minute. Because you're not going to get away with that lesson again. I'm an ex-teacher, remember. But actually, excuse moi, that's the wine. Dodgy Pinot Grigio. You need to do it again. They're actually native to the Middle East. Okay. They were introduced to Europe and Wales and England or whatever. But anyway, we need to get these cleaned up. Now, the recipe called for 2 large leeks. But as you can see, there was a bit of variation in the leeks, so I've got 3 here. And we're just going to chop off the top. We don't really want them dark green bits. And don't worry about the dirt, because we're going to clean them in a minute. Okay, so I'm just going to get rid of that. We want a bit of the old green. Of course, there's a lot of dirt in there, isn't there? And we're just going to cut off the bottoms. Now, I've always found leeks to be dirty all the way through, you know, from top to bottom. As you get closer into the middle, they're less dirty, obviously, or not dirty at all. But when he did his leeks, he did it according to the normal way, which is where essentially you cut into quarters there to open the bottom bit out and wash the dirt out of there. But like I say, there's all dirt up top here, so what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to chop them up and I'm going to rinse the whole lot under water. All right, so let me just get rid of that and have another swig of this wine. I don't like this wine, I'm sure I had this one before. And then you'll have to start hearing a little bit more about leek. Wait till we get to salmon. And if you're lucky, you might even hear about caviar as well. So I couldn't wait for you lot. So I've already chopped 2 of me leeks, okay? And I'm just going to chuck that into the colander, get that out of the way, get a bit of space for the last one. Now, your leek, okay? Vegetable. It's related to the onion family, your alliums. Okay, but did you realise leeks have been around a long time and people have been eating them for a long time? Essentially, for more than 6,000 years. The ancient Egyptians, you know, some of them slaves building the pyramids probably ate leeks. Certainly the ancient Egyptians did. I mean, we normally associate leeks more with the Welsh. But like I say, that's not where they come from originally. In fact, actually, leeks today, they're all cultivated. You can still get wild leek, apparently. Well, wild leek, I'm going to take that bit, that's filthy, that bit. I know I said I'm washing them, but that's like filth. Wild leek are actually getting more and more scarce. Okay, you can still find it. So, be careful doing that. I sliced my finger last time, did that. Let me get rid of that. We get that in there. And then, like I say, what I'm going to do with this, I'm now going to just rinse that. And I've actually kept my salad spinner out because I thought myself, after I've rinsed that bugger, all that stuff in the way on the floor, things aren't put away properly, but we're not going there. Anyway, I'll digress. Sorry. So I'm going to get them rinsed, okay, and then we'll spin them in the spinner just to get all the water off. We don't want that. But then we want a nice slow cook, a slow, gentle cook. So this bit is a bit that's going to take a long time. But before we cook the leeks, I want to do something else first. So, excuse me, I'm going to rinse them, get them in there, and then I'll show you what we're doing next. Did you know that leeks were apparently superior veg to the Romans? They thought it had very beneficial properties. The Emperor Nero was actually given the nickname Leek Eater because he used to eat loads of them, because he believed, because, you know, Nero, he thought he was a bit of a musical genius, and because of what they said about leeks, he thought if you get plenty of leeks, make his singing voice stay excellente. There you go. Interesting fact about leeks. They didn't know. Right, I've got a frying pan or something like that. Doesn't matter. This will be the pan that you cook your leeks in. So you might want a slightly deeper one like I've got here rather than just an ordinary frying pan, but whatever. Okay. So I'm just going to put it on a low heat. Okay. And I'm going to add a little dash of olive oil. We're going to use some more of that later, but what I've got here is about 2 tablespoons of panko breadcrumbs. This is to add a bit of texture to the final dish. Ooh, look at me. Bit of texture. Now, what we're going to do is we're just going to fry those panko breadcrumbs. Oh, I could tell you about panko, couldn't I? I don't know, because I didn't research it. It's only a minor part, so bugger off. I'm still telling you about leeks at the minute. Hippocrates, or Crates, or whatever you want to call it. You know, the guy who's considered the father of medicine, the ancient Greek. He said they were good. If you had a nosebleed, eat some leeks. Well, unless he meant shove it up your nose so it's not the blood coming out, I don't know. But he said they were good for stopping nosebleeds. Perhaps that's what he meant. Pluck the bugger up. So, you know, leeks have had a long, long history. And actually, it was believed it was the Phoenicians that introduced the leek into this country. They used to trade with the ancient English. Basically, they were after our tin. Primarily, we mined in Cornwall. And it's believed that leeks were one of the things they traded. I don't know what the leek had been like after it travelled all that way. By slow boat from China. Well, not China, but you know what I mean. Now, we just want these sort of goldenish. Okay. So just keep your eye on them. My leeks are in my salad spinner. Give them a spin. said to you when I started, I said about the leeks. Whee! Well, I've bought a wobble board, you know, a vibration board. Christ, I should just get a stand on this and let it go. Look. Oh, I'll wobble to you like that, I'm not content. So, the fact that the leeks were apparently worn by the Welsh in battle, not a lot of evidence for it, but the general consensus is that back in about 640 AD, the Briton king, King Cadwalla, they were trying to keep out the invading Saxons. Actually, that's an interesting thing, actually. If you read all up, we have always big thing going on in the UK for quite a while now, particularly at the moment, about migrants and things like that. Us English, we're a mixture of migrants. You know, we're a whole, you know, we talk about, you know, British people. Well, British people are made up of Saxons, Angles, Vikings, whole range of different ancient sort of tribes. But anyway, King Cadwalla and that weren't too happy about the Saxons. He wanted to stop them coming in. So he got together a big army to try and stop them. And then someone said, how the bloody hell do we know who's a Saxon and who's one of our own men? How the bloody hell do we not know? We're going to shoot our own men. So apparently the story is, I know what we do, boyo. I don't know if he talked like that. And I suppose that's a little bit naughty. I shouldn't be taking piss. But he said, if we all wear a leek, if you see someone with a leek, don't fucking kill them. Because they're on our side. And I suppose that's what they did. And they had an outstanding victory. Whether that's because it was fucking died. Oh shit, no, sorry mate. You're one of mine. Oh, I can't shoot him instead. Oh fuck, he was. But there you go. That's supposedly the story of why the Welsh wear the leeks. I'll tell you about the Welsh cards in a minute. Right, so I'm just going to toast these for a little bit more, and when they're done, we're going to empty them out of the pan, give it a little clean, and then we're going to cook the leeks slowly now. Right, so they've got a nice golden colour. So what I'm going to do at this point is we're going to scrape all them out of there. There's some there didn't go golden, but never mind. And so, like I said, this is going to be our texture. Okay, sort of finishing off. What I'm just going to do, not that I don't really think it makes much bloody difference, to be honest. I'm just going to wipe that out. Okay, just get rid of them crumbs. Now, we said about the Welsh wearing leeks. We perhaps more think of the Welsh wearing leeks on St David's Day, because there is an association with the leek and St David. Mainly because around the time that St David was alive, leeks had a big reputation for being very healthy, virtuous, medicinal properties, and it's sort of become associated with St David, and therefore that's why the Welsh wear leeks, or a leek, on St David's Day. Right, so just going to turn that down. Now the trick with this now with the leeks, they need to be cooked slowly. If you cook them too quick, it tends to make them all bitter. I'm doing a lot of hand movements again, aren't I? Make them all bitter. So you want to cook them nice and slowly, and that encourages sort of the sugary aspect of it. Okay, not saying it's going to make it bloody sugary. Oh, actually, before I do that, so you're going to want about, I've got a little spatula in it, yes I have. You're going to want about 1.5 tablespoons of butter. Okay, and we'll keep that because I need that spatula in a minute, and we're just going to melt that into that as well, I'm going to add about a tablespoon of olive oil. Okay. We're just going to gently melt that together. Now at this point, I want to get me leeks dry. Now, pardon me, it's that wine, I tell you. It's not the beer, it's the wine, isn't it? I think that'll be alright. So, actually not an awful lot of water. I managed to drain most of that out of there, didn't I? A few leaks escaped, as I thought they might do. So, on St David's Day, now, do you know why we put butter and olive oil together? I have told you before. If you don't know, you obviously weren't listening. If you just use the butter, there's a risk you can burn the butter. But by having some olive oil in there, that stops that. Now, we're now going to put in there them leeks. Okay. And we're going to add a little bit of salt. And we're now just going to slowly cook them for a minimum of 20 minutes. Ideally, we want about 40. What time is it? Well, the wife did say originally, no, don't do the voice. She said, leave it a bit longer. We'll eat a bit later. So I said, okay. She said, about 7:30 to 8. And I thought, that's a long time, isn't it? So I won't argue with her. Won't argue. So she said, you can earn more on the later side if you want. Because she's doing a mermaid bit again. But I'm also, don't do the voice, washing my hair. And obviously I've got to dry it. Party, we're going to party tomorrow. Because I'm officially retired. I've been retired about 3 weeks now. But we planned a little party. Really, just we fancied a party. We just use an excuse. Day after it's my birthday. But it's not a birthday party, it's a retirement party. Anyway, I digress. On St David's Day, it used to be believed that if young virgins or young unmarried ladies who hadn't got a clue who their next husband was going to be, if they went to sleep on St David's Day and put a leek under their pillow, they would have a dream or a vision in which they would see their future husband. So they would say, oh, that's George from down the road. Oh, we're getting married. Or it might be, I don't know who the fuck he is, but apparently he's going to be my husband. But there you go. See, wondrous things, leeks. Wondrous things. Tell you who you're going to marry. Now, I've got to be careful, because the reason I got this wine is we want about 120 mils of it in it later on. Let me... That'll do. It's probably a little bit more than 120 mils, but who cares? And I've spilled it anyway. Now, the other ingredients you're going to want is some crème fraîche, 2 tablespoons. You're going to want some fresh ground black pepper, some lemon juice, half a lemon juice and half zest, and you want some fresh dill. So I told Madam when we were shopping, better buy some fresh dill. Oh, we got some in our herb garden, she said, because we've got a little herb garden outside there. And I said, I don't remember us planting dill. She said, yes, we've got loads of it, loads of it. And I went, oh, all right then. Don't bother my dill then. So anyway, earlier tonight I said to her, by the way, because she was out in the garden watering plants, I better get some dill. And she said, there you go. And I said, where's the dill? She said, there. I So that's bloody chives. Chives. I thought it was dill. No, it's chives. Oh well, we're having chives with it. Well, actually, as it happens, I think slightly in error. The recipe does say at the very end, put some fresh chives on it. But actually, you want dill. Bit of a Scandinavian thing, that. With your fish, your dill. I've got some dried dill, so we're going to use that. And that's it, really. Other than, of course, your freshly caught salmon. But we've got to get these leeks done first. So, like I say, it is now just... I might turn that up a fraction, because that is a little bit on the low side. Leeks are mentioned in the Bible. Old Testament, I believe. The book of Numbers. Talk about, you know, when the Jews left Egypt, when they escaped from Egypt. And them remarking how one of the things they would miss was leeks. And there is a Jewish... I don't know if you call it a festival or what, where they talk about there's something to do with leeks. I can't really remember, to be honest, but there is this association with, you know, the Jewish exile from Egypt, and the fact that, you know, leeks were something they were quite used to. So I think that's a little bit better. They're starting to cook now. We don't want it going changing colour. We want to gently cook it. And we're starting to get some moisture out of there. It's alright. We want moisture out. Don't say moist. That's pervert. If it starts looking like it's going a bit too much, turn the heat down. Oh, now, one final thing to tell you about leeks. I said to you about the Welsh Guard. Apparently on... every year on St David's Day, the Welsh Guard wear a leek in their caps as a sort of a bit of recognition of St David's Day. And apparently, all the new recruits on that day, one of their little tasks is, here's a leek, mate, raw, eat the bug. And they have to prove their worth by eating a raw leek. I couldn't say that's a big deal, but there you go. Unless they didn't clean it first. Right, so, actually what I might do, what time is it? 1:30. So, we're going to cook this through for another 20 minutes. Like I say, keep your eye on it, keep it moving. Don't let it start colouring up. And that's all about leeks. All right, I'll tell you about salmon. Don't get bored. Now, these have got skin on. We don't want the skin on it. So, I've already done the other three. Essentially, he says in his recipe, about, you know, a fillet, it's about 170 grams per person. I don't know what these are, but we've got 2 each. Okay, so I've skinned them. Now we're not going to cook them just yet, but I want to get them sort of prepared, and we're going to, like I say, steam them. So I've got my steamer at the back there, but we'll do that when we're a bit closer to finishing these leeks off. So I've told you about leeks, so let's tell you about salmon. You probably know a lot about salmon already anyway, but did you know it's an ancient fish? Or rather, you know, the salmon today obviously is descended from an ancient fish, an ancient type salmon, that potentially dated back to like 7 million years. Now, salmon today get quite big. Back then, these ancient blighters We're up to 3 metres long. And a bit nasty. I don't necessarily mean nasty to eat, I mean just I'm a nasty bastard. Right, now I'm not throwing them skins away because I'm going to try something, but I ain't going to tell you in case I fuck up. Okay, but I'm just going to get cleaned up here, and then I'll tell you what how we're going to prepare the salmon. And in the meantime, I'm still just making sure I'm gently caressing my leeks. They're softening up already, but like I said, we don't want them colouring. So here's my salmon, okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drizzle over a little bit of olive oil. We're going to, went a bit heavy there, but never mind, because we're going to be turning it around. Okay, I also want a little bit of salt on there, a little bit of seasoning, and then just going to sort of rub that in a bit. Okay, and season the other side. So I'm just going to add on a little bit of salt there, and then these are now ready to go into the steamer. Okay, now this obviously line caught salmon, marmite, but most of the salmon, if you was to buy it from the supermarket, why would you do that when I can catch it? But most salmon that you'll buy in the supermarket is farmed salmon. Now, I know there's a lot of controversy about that, but at least you might argue they're not coming out of the wild. However, there is issues with wild salmon because of the way in which we go around damaging the environment and their habitats, things like that. So most of your salmon that you get these days will be farmed. So I've got here me what's name tray, and I'm just going to place these steaks, fillets, into there. Give me a little bit of a tight fit with this one. Okay, and now that will be ready for the steamer. Now you may have noticed a noise in the background of the last one, and you can still hear it now. That's connected to what I was doing with the skins, but if it works out I'll tell you. Now salmon are born in fresh water. They're born up in, up rivers, up streams, and then they make their way down to the sea, and they spend the best part of their life at sea. So they make this transition from a freshwater fish to saltwater fish, and then they get the urge, like we all do, to have a little bit of hanky panky. Except in their case, it's a one-off thing really. They get the urge, and they make their way back to the original stream or river they were spawned in. And they do this with a combination probably of smell. They do have a highly sensitive sort of smell response, if you like. But these fish manage to make their way back to that original spawning ground. And while they're on that journey, which can be up to sort of 6 months, they don't eat. So they're relying on the fat stocks that they built up throughout their life to keep them going till they get to that point where they were born, if you like, at which point the females release up to 10,000 eggs. The males release their sperm to fertilise them, and it's a huge number of eggs and huge number of sperm, I suppose, as well. And even though vast number of them do, I was going to say germinate, do fertilise. Only about 1% actually end up surviving to become a salmon that will one day return and do this all over again. Now, the fact that they can do this in the same stream means that they become highly adapted to that particular environment, and as a result there's quite a lot of genetic diversity. Now, I think there's a little bit too much wine in there, so I'm just going to have a little dash of wine. I might find something else to drink, I think. Now, we're starting to get there with those leeks, I think. How long? They've had 20 minutes. So what at this point I'm going to do is I'm going to chuck that wine in there. He says to deglaze the deglaze the pan, but to be honest, it's not much deglazing he's doing. And now what we want to do is cook those leeks in that wine and reduce it down by half. Okay, it's far too runny at the moment. When we're ready, that's when we'll add the crème fraîche, but we do that at the end of the reducing. Okay. Now, salmon have very good hearing. They can hear vibrations. They have lateral lines down the side of their bodies where they can pick up these frequencies, these vibrations. They also apparently have good eyesight. They can see in UV, which obviously we can't as humans. And the actual sight thing is apparently something more to do with possibly how they find their prey. But these salmon, as they make this journey back up these rivers and streams, I mean, salmon can swim up to 9 miles an hour. Is it 9 miles? I think it's not. Yeah, 9 miles an hour. But they can also leap, and you see these famous pictures, or famous videos of salmon leaping up the falls, because it's easy going down, isn't it? But they've got to leap up these falls. They can jump up to 2 meters because they're so determined to get there. And then you get your zombie salmon. The swimming dead. Actually, it's looking like my little experiment is working, so just giving it a little bit longer, but we're getting there. So we're still reducing this down. Now I'll tell you about zombie. Oh look, we switched to red. Jammy red brew. I better not have too much of this. Got a party tomorrow. Gin party. Maidstone Distillery are hosting it, so got to be careful I don't drink too much tomorrow night. Now I'll tell you about zombie salmon. Before I do that, I did mention our our salmon on their journey up the river often change colour. They obviously lose a lot of body mass. The coho salmon, there's 7 different species of what we call Pacific salmon, one of which is the coho. Now the coho, on this journey upriver to do their final reproduction act, the one and only final reproduction act, they go bright red on one side and they get this hooked jaw. They develop this hooked jaw, so their jaws are all displaced. But zombie salmon, once the old salmon have got to their spawning ground, done their spawning, that's it, they're fucked. Like I say, they've spent 6 months possibly without eating. They've completely exhausted all their energy, their body fat and everything. They've got nothing left. They die. But these dead salmon have been seen swimming. And what it's believed is that post-mortem, their muscles are still sort of spasming, and as a result, they sort of like are swimming, but they're dead. They're swimming dead. Now that's getting there, okay? Still a bit runny yet, so we'll give it a little bit longer. So at this point, now I've put my steamer on. I might turn it up a bit. Now, depending how thick your salmon is, I do mean how intelligent it is. I'm talking Donald Trump here. We're talking about intelligence. I think that's actually intelligent. But no, we're not even talking that. We're talking about how thick the fillet is. Obviously, that will depend on how long it takes to cook. Typical fillet that we're talking about should be about 8 minutes. But obviously, you're going to steam it until it's cooked. Now, I can see it being a bastard to get out of there. I bet that fillet breaks up. But anyway, we'll worry about that when it comes to that. So we're reducing that. We're getting that. Oh, I'll move that out of the way. Oh yeah, it's really getting hot. Get that boiling, and then we'll put it on a gentle simmer, ready to cook the fish. You know the largest salmon ever caught was by me. 57 kilos. 57 kilos? Bloody hell. Now that's almost there. I can hear my steamer getting up to temperature. Little tip for you. If you want to get it going sooner, boil a kettle, chuck that in there, and obviously then you're going to wait for it all to heat up. And it'll boil quicker in the kettle than it is in there, I think. So, in a second I'm going to put my salmon in there. Now, one final thing about salmon, well, there's loads of things I could tell you about salmon, but I'm trying to keep it short. Don't want to bore you, do I? The presidential salmon. Now, there used to be this competition in a particular river. Who could catch the biggest salmon? Obviously, if it was still going now, it would be me, but there you go. But in 1912, right, that's boiling away now. So I'm just going to turn that down nice and low. At which point, I still see fish going on there. We're going to put that in there. Put that on there. And now I'm just going to give timer more just so I keep track of it, 6 minutes. Probably want a little bit longer than that. Anyway, 1912, Carl Anderson, he won the competition for the biggest trout, biggest salmon. He got a 22-pound salmon. So he said to the president at the time, President Taft, "Here you go, President, sir. I present you with the biggest salmon." And so then it became a little bit of an annual tradition that the winner of the biggest salmon from this particular river, Pembrocost or something, I don't know, would present the presidential salmon. However, not by 1992, they decided that the wild salmon was getting a little bit scarce. So they decided it probably wasn't a good idea. So it was suspended. So the last president to receive the traditional presidential salmon was George H.W. Bush. Since then, they've not done it. Right, that's just about there. So at this point, I'm going to turn the heat off, and then we're going to take those 2 tablespoons of crème fraîche, which is getting a little bit liquid. We're just going to tip that in there, okay? And I'll just stir that in. And like I said, it's off the heat now, but we'll just use the residual heat that's in that pan and in them leeks, okay? And we're also going to add a little pinch of salt, a little bit of fresh pepper, and then we just essentially want to keep those leeks, the Leek Confit as he calls it. Well, I'm a bit dubious about whether he call it confit, but there you go, different story altogether. We're just going to keep that warm. Okay, so I'll turn that off. Yeah. So we've got that busy steaming away. Now, my trick worked, and it actually shows you what an oily fish salmon is, because what I did was I took them skins and I put them in the air fryer. Didn't add anything to them. I think I should have descaled them actually. It's more for decoration, but anyway, I just put them as is in the air fryer, fried them on high. I think in the end about 15 minutes. I probably got away with 10 because I want some crispy skin. But it was the amount of oil, so I've got them up there at the minute on some kitchen paper, just training off. So remember, we want our lemon, a bit of leek there. We're going to want some dill. We want them panko breadcrumbs, and we're going to want some chives. Okay. Now whether he made a mistake there, because he says right at the end, put some chives on it. I do not know, but there you go. Let's get rid of that. So now, final accompaniment is caviar. Oh, perhaps I'm about to tell you about caviar. So that salmon's had about 6-7 minutes now. I'm turning that off, and I'm just going to remove that lid. And now we're just going to take that off of there. There's a fair bit of moisture in there. Don't say moist, you pervert. Like I say, I can imagine trying to get that out of there is going to be a problem. So just want to put that in plate just to stop it making a mess. So at this point, I want to add some lemon zest. Now, I'll probably end up doing, now you should be using unwaxed lemons for this whenever you're sort of doing any zesting. If you can't buy unwaxed ones, then you scrub them in some soapy water. That will get rid of the wax that's been put on there. I might save some of that for when we plate it, because I can imagine most of that will get lost. And we're also just going to take some lemon juice. There's a few pips in there, so I'm just trying to be careful. Just going to add a little lemon juice to that. Now, I said to you about caviar. Wait, see that bloody seed escape there? You little shit. Now, I mentioned about caviar. And the reason I mentioned caviar is because we're sort of going to add caviar as a little sort of extra. Now, this is what they call lumpfish caviar. This is not true caviar. Caviar is basically unfertilised fish eggs, also called roe. Now, there's lots of different types of roe. All caviar is roe, but not all roe is caviar. Caviar properly is from the sturgeon, the beluga particularly. But there are substitutes, cheaper. So you've got your lumpfish. This is generally sort of a German type thing, although I think that might be Scandinavian. Look at the name of the trade down that. You can even get a vegan version which is made from algae or agar. Yeah, agar, that is I was just thinking, is that really vegan? Right, so I've got me dill, I've got me panko, I've got whatever. So it's time to start plating up. What we do is we take our leek mixture, Leek Confit as he called it, and we're essentially going to just create a little bed for our salmon fillets. Quite satisfying doing that. Right, and then we're going to take our salmon fillet. I bet this one all falls apart. One I did off the camera was perfect. And we're just going to lay that, along with the bit that just fell off, onto that Leek Confit, yeah, and that one broke up. I'll tell you what, a good job I did the other one off camera. So I've got a good one. Okay, might as well. Since this is a grotty one, I suppose I'll better eat this one with the wifey out one. I'll get the salmon out. So that's that done. Now, at this point, if you had your fresh dill coming out, you would add a little bit of fresh dill. That'll do. You're going to add, for a little bit of texture, those golden panko breadcrumbs. Now the caviar is a bit of an extra. Now caviar is expensive if you have proper caviar. Okay, I mean it's expensive enough even if it's not proper caviar. But given what it is, it's always been associated with Russia, and it's been sort of semi-associated with the fact that it was Russians who sort of started the business, if you like. So I'm just going to add a little bit more zest on top, even though I'm not sure actually any zest is coming out of that. Trouble is, once you cut that lemon, it doesn't actually, it's not firm enough really to get the zest off, and it doesn't hurt actually at this stage if we do get a little bit of lemon juice with it. Yeah, see that I've got clumps of lemon on there, lemon zest on there. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. Now, at this point, I'm going to take some of my fresh chives, and I'm just going to add a little bit of that over the top. Yes, it's chive, darling, not dill. Dill looks completely different. Oh, does it really? Didn't know that. Oops, get them long bits off. And then, as a final little accompaniment, just to give it that little edge. Now, I'm using a metal spoon. My hand wet. I'm using a metal spoon. Now, by the way, caviar should keep chilled, and if you're having caviar on its own, generally you have it over ice. And some people argue you drink it with vodka. We didn't drink it, you eat it with vodka to like cleanse the palate. Now, do not use silver spoons, and technically speaking, you don't use a metal spoon. You certainly don't eat off a metal spoon, because the argument is that the natural salts and everything else in there, you tend to get, whoop, made a mess there, look, got it all on my finger. Where did that go? So it didn't go inside my fishing vest. Let me just put that to one side. Let's give that a little decoration. That the saltiness and the reacts with the metal to create like electrical charge, and so not only does it sort of give you this funny little sort of zingers, if you like, it's essentially altering the flavour. So I've probably gone a little bit overboard on that side. Anyway, now, come on. There we have our steamed salmon on a bed of comfy leeks, garnished with crispy breadcrumbs, panko breadcrumbs. Actually, I'm going to do that on that one side and one on that side, crispy salmon skin and caviar, chives and dill. There we go. I'm going to eat that now. Let me put that down. Let me shove my skin on here. And then let me taste the bugger. So, a little bit of leek, a little bit of caviar. The leek's nice and soft. You've got that sort of saltiness from the caviar. Let's try it with a bit of salmon. Salmon is nicely cooked, sort of semi falling apart. Delish. The leeks look creamy, but just remember all there is 2 tablespoons of crème fraîche in that. That's a low fat one. But there you go. Bloody yes. Let's get that down my neck after all that hard day's fishing.